Hi girls, welcome back to another wonderful week of Farby and 10. These next upcoming days are very exciting. We're getting ready for Purim. And Purim, it says that when Mashiach comes, all of the Yom Tovim are going to be nullified besides the Yom Tov of Purim. It actually says about Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year on the calendar, at least we think it is. It says Yom Kippur, it's like Purim. So clearly there's something very holy and very powerful about Purim. One of the mitzvahs that we do on Purim is that we read from the Megillas Esther. And specifically, the name of a Jewish woman was chosen for all generations and for eternity so that we can learn something from the power of the Jewish woman. So I wanted to share with you two thoughts about Esther that I've gained a lot and hopefully you can gain as well. Number one is Esther's strength. Esther tried everything in her ability and her power not to be chosen to be the queen. She hid herself, and then eventually she was found and she was brought to the palace. When she was brought to the palace, she tried everything not to beautify herself in order to be chosen as queen. And obviously Hashem had other plans, and Esther was chosen. Once she was brought to Shushan, she was brought to foreign soil. She was brought to a surrounding where she was not familiar with. No Jews around her, no Jewish friends, no Jewish family. And it was so easy for Esther to forget her identity as being a Jew. And as a matter of fact, no one would even know. No one would tell anyone about it. But then specifically the Medrash tells us that Esther stood strong in who she was as a Jew, and she says she stood strong in her identity even more than before. She hired maidservants each day of the week so that she should know when it's Shabbos, so she could keep the holy Shabbos. She told Achashverosh that she's a vegetarian, so she was able to keep kosher in the palace. And the Medrash tells us that she went to the mikvah, ensuring that she continued the laws of family purity. Here, Esther was able to stay strong in a surrounding that was really foreign. And I think that when it comes to every single one of our lives, thank God we live around good friends and family, but sometimes living in a society, a foreign culture, where our neshama could feel really just being thrown into foreign soil. It's not familiar. It's not familiar with what it had up there in Shemayim. And there's so many things that are luring us, so many bloggers that are trying to get our attention, so many fashion designers that are trying to define for us what modesty is, what beauty is. And we need to remind ourselves that Esther gives us that strength to be strong in an atmosphere where things are a little bit different, and to stay strong in who we are as a person. As a matter of fact, sometimes it could be our friends or perhaps our family that's not as inspired as we are. And we need to remind ourselves that we can't let that apatheticness, that coldness, that kaltkeit to get into us, and to remind us that even when people around us are trying to bring in foreign ideas and concepts, we stay strong like Esther. There was once two students who came to the Rebbe for Yehudis, two younger boys, and they went to Talmud Torah, and the Rebbe asked them if they planned on going to yeshiva, and the boys said no. And the Rebbe asked them why. He said, because none of our friends are going to yeshiva. So the Rebbe turned to one of the boys and said, what have you been learning in Talmud Torah? So he says, I've been learning about Noach. So the Rebbe said, could you imagine if Noach would have listened to all the people around him? Could you imagine if Noach would have been affected by his surrounding? Where would the world be today? And then he asked the other friend, what did you learn in school? And he said, I learned about Avram. And the Rebbe said, could you imagine if Avram would have done what everyone around him did? Could you imagine if Avram would have not had the strength to bring monotheism into the world? Where would the world be today? And the Rebbe blessed them that they should have the strength to be strong in their identity and not be affected by their surrounding. Number two is the Mesiras Nefesh that Esther had. Esther's Mesiras Nefesh was so strong that when Mordechai turned to Esther and said, I want you to go to King Achashverosh to save the Jewish people on their behalf, Esther says the famous words, the famous very sad words, Ka'asher avadati avadati, I will be lost forever. As a matter of fact, when we read the Megillah, we read it in a sorrowful tune, like we read Echa, Ka'asher avadati avadati, I will be lost forever. What is she referring to? She says, Mordechai, if I go to King Achashverosh, number one, I could lose my life, my physical life, because Achashverosh has has told me that the only way I could come to him is if he calls me. So if I haven't been called by him, he can kill me. And number 2 is if I go to Achashverosh, I will lose my rights to be married to Mordechai, because until now she's been in this illegitimate relationship with Achashverosh from a forced place. But according to Jewish law, the moment she goes to Achashverosh on her own free will, she loses her rights to be married to Mordechai. So she tells Mordechai, I will lose my rights to be married to you, the Nasi of the generation. And she also says, I'll lose my Olam Haba, I'll lose my world to come by going to Achashverosh and being married to a non-Jewish king in an illegitimate relationship. But Esther knew what has to be done, and she risked her body, she risked her soul, her Gashmias, her Ruchnias, her Olam Haza, her Olam Haba, this world, and in the world to come, in order to save her people. And I think when it comes to every single one of us, and when it comes to sacrifice, we're very clear with what our mission and our purpose is. We were brought here in this world to bring Mashiach, as simple as that. But sometimes it takes a little bit of sacrifice. And when we think about Mesiras Nefesh, we think about people who gave up their lives. But sometimes it's harder to live as a Jew than to die as a Jew. On college campus, I see many students who do acts of Mesiras Nefesh that are above and beyond so precious. One particular student called us up and he told my husband and I that he just broke up with his girlfriend. And I asked him what happened. I know that they've been dating for many years during their college years, and it seemed like everything was going well. And he said, because I found out that according to Jewish law, she wasn't really Jewish. And I don't want to marry someone who's not Jewish, and I don't want her to convert for me. That's amazing. Somebody who's dated someone for 4 years is willing to sacrifice the fact that he wants to ensure that he marries a Jew. Unbelievable. Just a couple of days ago, the lawyer for Donald Trump, past President Donald Trump, was asked to stand in case for the president. And this was an opportunity for him to be able to really rise in his career. All his life he's been working to become a lawyer, and now at this point he could really make it in his ranks in office. And when the president asked him if he could lead the case for him, he sadly declined, or proudly declined, because it was Shabbos. And I quote, and this is what he responded: as it turns out, I was unable to give the closing argument I very much wanted to give, and the former president wanted me to give, since it came out on Shabbos. But no real choice here, and while it would have meant a lot to me to give it, Shabbos is obviously all the more important. No comparison. How unbelievable. This lawyer, David Schoen, unbelievable modern day Mesiras Nefesh. Let us ask ourselves, what's my modern day Mesiras Nefesh? What am I giving up of myself? Something that I thought is hard to do, but I can do it. Maybe taking a certain outfit out of my closet. Maybe it's taking certain songs out of my phone. I can make a difference. I can make it happen. I can push myself like Esther. So L'chaim, this Purim, we should be so joyful. We should spend Purim in Yerushalayim with the Beis HaMikdash, and let us remind ourselves that Esther gives us that strength to stay strong in our surrounding, even though sometimes people around us are not necessarily super inspired. But stay strong with who we are and in our identity as a Yid and as a Chassid. And number 2 is to always remember that Esther had so much Mesiras Nefesh to keep her people alive, to keep us alive. What's my modern day Mesiras Nefesh in order to bring Mashiach? L'chaim and happy Purim.